This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. Now I'm joined by Maurice Brosnan to look ahead to the big county final this weekend between Salthill, Knocknacarra and Maigh, a repeat of the 2022 final this Saturday evening under the lights in Pearse Stadium at 7:30. Before we get into it, Mars, first off, has this been a good championship this year?
Good question. It has, I think. Yeah, it has. The obvious caveat to this is, was it an unpredictable championship in the vein that in my job, I suppose I get to cover a lot of the kind of Tipperary hurling, Clare hurling, even Kerry football, and you'd see huge scope. You could struggle to pick between eight winners or so, whereas I think it would have been, if you asked a lot of people to predict their four semi-finals at the start of the year, they would have predicted the four that came out of it. So in that sense, maybe not. But in terms of actual entertainment value and some of the quality of football we've seen, I think it has been a good championship. I think back in some of the quarterfinals and we saw some right good games, even games that, I think back to the James's game, despite the way that finished, they were right there for 50 minutes. The Cuilinn game going to extra time was great drama in that. I think what you're seeing from teams now, actually, maybe I would have spoken to you a couple of years ago, and I would have been a bit not worried is too far, but a bit apprehensive in terms of, is the quality of football still what it was? Are we still producing a host of exciting prospects? And in that sense, I'd actually be very encouraged. I think you've seen there's some very smart teams in Galway. You're seeing a lot of players with very high potential ceilings who, if the Park and his management team are starting to get together their development squad for the FUD, they've a whole host of lads there who are well able for that. So all in all, yeah, I think it has been entertainment. The new rules has infiltrated reasonably well, and you've got the makings of a right blockbuster final. All that said, Paul, the way this thing often works is it'll depend on the final. If we get a cracker,
Yeah.
everyone will be ahead in the championship. If we don't, it'll be the worst of the worst. So, but at this juncture, yeah, I would be reasonably content with what we've seen.
Just before we look at it, there was obviously, I suppose, word going around last week that the development squad got back together. They played a challenge match against the University of Galway Sigerson Cup team. There was word that there was a couple of lads from the club championships, your likes of Brian Roach, Dara Walsh, Bushy McDonough, Casey O'Kelly, all these players got called in. It's good in that sense to see these players who've had outstanding club championships for their clubs being in with the development squad this early in the year and maybe even potentially might get a few runs throughout the FBD and make break their way into a Galway squad that way.
100%, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And they clearly are paying attention to lads who showed a lot of promise, maybe wouldn't necessarily even have been in the conversation in terms of at that level previously, but really have kicked on in the last couple of years and are fully deserving of getting the call. I think it's a guy, in my head, I'm thinking of guys like Shane McGrath, who had a storming year for Dromore this year, or James Webb from Mount Gerard. To see the likes of them get in there, I think there's positions that you'd look at from a Galway perspective and think wouldn't be bad to develop a bit of depth there. So young Costello from St James's to go in as a goalkeeper, people like that. Sean Dunn from my own club in Barnet. I think a lot of us would like to see a couple of more young, exciting forwards come onto the scene. There's always a good thing to have. So yeah, I mean I've said this countless times to you. I think that development squad is a great idea. Like I really just serve a function. It's not treated with the disregard or maybe nose up mentality that would have been there previously, where lads would have been asked why even bothering to go in with that. There's seen to be value in being part of that and getting a chance to play in a FBD and the exposure that comes with that. And it can, as we've seen in other cases, it's been a fine stepping ground for other lads to kick on as well. So all in all, I think that was it's a great idea and great to see a lot of those lads get the recognition that they deserve.
Do you think it's the right decision to bring back the FBD games? I know my own job, I was covered two challenge matches last year, and you were nearly sort of going to the challenge match wondering were you actually in the right place, or where is that was it actually going to be on? But to bring back the preseason competitions, do you think it's the right decision?
The only case that I can see from it, when you boil it down, is financially. Is the You saw provincial councils kicked up a right fuss in terms of what it meant for them. Uh, I mean this in terms of revenue when they were disbanded or cancelled last year. So that push was always going to come. It depends on who you talk to. I spoke to Andy Moore about this a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him that particular question, and he made the point logistically, it just makes their lives easier to have a game set in stone where you're not have to organize a venue and a referee and everything that goes into it from that perspective. So I see it from that sense. The other one then is though that, I mean, people are, you know, it's funny. People who are arguing that the FBD or that these preseason competitions were vital were saying, look at all these challenges that are going on last year. Do you think those challenges are going to stop
Yeah.
in the turn of the season when the preseasons come back? If you do, you're head in the sand. Like you're completely deluded if you think that there's teams not up and down the country playing challenges constantly, regardless of if there's preseason competitions or not. So that argument just didn't make any sense to me. Um, but no, I mean, I don't find myself getting too exercised about it. If bring it back, fine. And as I say, it's a nice thing to have for the kind of a sense of competition for those particular lads. But the bigger picture thing for me was just that you had situations where lads were being asked to play in FBD games and also out in Sigerson at the same time. And I maybe would have thought in the conversation about player welfare and return dates, we would have had a bit of a conversation about is there a scope to just say right into the rules that lads involved in Sigerson panels don't necessarily need to be involved in this. I don't think it has to be like a hard and fast rule, but it's just managers having a bit of sense about them to know that you don't need to put them in that position. But unfortunately, the reality is that I'm going to be talking to you in January and February, and we're going to be talking about young Johnny who played 3 games in 7 days and now has got a devastating injury. Like that is, we're back to that. So from that perspective, I wouldn't overly welcome it either.
Uh, Just a word, we were talking there about the Galway squad. Do you think maybe this year is the first year in a while we could see the squad maybe, I suppose, shaken up a bit? There is a lot of lads, and I think it's the first year in a long while where a lot of players maybe have put their hand up from the club championship to get called in, and obviously, um, Pork staying on for another year. With the management team as well, there doesn't seem to be any word really coming from it. There's obviously been a lot of rumours, but like squad and management wise, would you see much of a shake up, or how do you see it early on?
My this is not the most exciting answer, unfortunately, but my expectation is that this stuff would be a little less blockbuster or headline grabbing than people think. So if there is a change to management, I don't think it's going to be a star-studded name necessarily. It might actually just be someone locally, maybe a manager who's involved in a club championship at the minute or something like that. Like I think the scope for it to be along those lines. But to answer your second question, then I think there will be a bit of shake-up in the squad, yeah, and I think you will see lads come in. But one thing, Galway have got a proven track record, and this manager in particular have a proven track record of getting in kind of like unpolished gems, like very high ceiling players who've shown a bit about them. But I think of a guy like I was just watching him last weekend, like Keane Darcy. I'd say I was at Keane Darcy's last ever game for Calashran before he transferred, and when I consider that guy I saw versus the Keane Darcy that we see now, like the transformation in his game, and he deserves a huge amount of credit for that in terms of going to Dublin and getting himself in absolutely outrageous shape, then getting the
I
football
think
into him.
I think I've asked you this before, but do you think Darcy going to Ballyboden has improved him as a footballer?
See, I'm probably gave you the same answer when you
Yeah.
asked me that question last time. I don't think it's necessary for a guy to move to a Dublin super club to get into Galway, and I don't think it's fair to his club to suggest that either. But it's what he has done personally. Like the credit, I don't think the credit goes to Ballyboden in a scenario like this as much as it goes to Keane himself in terms of how he has transformed himself, and he comes along in an Ireland final and kicks, was it 3, 4 points from play
Three
when he
from
struck
play,
it,
yeah.
yeah, that day, and he's just gone from strength to strength. Was a kick up machine. I think he was actually a bit unlucky not to get nominated for, or at least get nominated for an All Star 2 weeks ago there. So, uh, but yeah, my point is, you could see a lot of those kind of very high ceiling players, in my opinion, guys who have a huge amount of room to flourish in an environment like that, come in and kick on in that sense. So I would expect a couple to make that jump. There's natural, there's an evolution, and this that the actual 15 has been reasonably set for the last while. So maybe you see a bit of shift there, but I don't think it'll be anything majorly dramatic either.
Yeah, I know before Kenny Naughton was on the podcast and he was talking about the first day Keane came in training and it was in the gym and he said he was just mad for it. But it's obviously the standards within that Ballyboden setup because even when he went at the start there was obviously huge competition. Michael Darmacawley obviously still there to make the team. So I suppose getting those standards in a Dublin club has obviously given him the hunger, and he's just progressed on ever since.
Yeah, and he's playing in uh, a very competitive championship and a team now that would have aspirations at a minimum of going on and backing up their Dublin title with Leinster. Like that's ultimately what happens in Dublin. So from that sense, yeah, I can absolutely see why he would flourish in an environment like that. Similarly, in terms of what I think I spoke to Keane about this after the Tyrone League game when Shane kicked the free at the end to save it,
Mm.
and he actually said afterwards that as much as the physical transformation that we've all seen has happened, psychologically, mentally, the development that he has in terms of how he considers intercounty football and what it does, the role it plays in the life of someone like him and the environment that he's in. So he just got a dose of perspective, which happens, to all of us when you. It still hasn't happened to me now yet, but it happens to a lot of us when we get older. So I think in that sense, yeah, I can see why he. I don't think his trajectory is a surprise to anybody.
If we talk about the county final, so the main event, Salthill Knocknacarra, Maigh Cullen, 7:30. Saturday evening, repeated the 22 final. First, before we get into the game, obviously the two managers who were on the line in 22, John O'Mahony and Don Connellan, no longer with us. And I think for both teams, they will want to remember these two men because they gave so much service to both clubs.
Well said, yeah. And I mean, like I said, just a tragic element of this, and two people that I think that the way to, there's that old line, it doesn't really matter. Players don't care how much a coach knows. What they care about is how they make you feel. I think there's two men that kind of embody that. You got that sense of if you talk to the South Illinois Cullen lads, it's the man management, it's, the dedication, that kind of stuff that stays with them. So, yeah, look at it's. I think it's been a credit to both clubs in terms of the ways that they've paid honour to both of them, and I'm sure that will continue after the game on Sunday too, or Saturday.
You're obviously from Berna in my Cullen at the minute. Do you get the sense is this sort of a special rivalry when you consider a lot of players very close, friendly, a lot would have went to school together, a lot of went to college together. A lot of these players know each other inside out.
Yeah, I mean the familiarity here is crazy, particularly given the sense that off the back of that kind of 2022 final. I mean, I remember there was one stage there was double digit my Cullen lads inside in the Galway panel and a whole heap of Salthill lads too. So they would have had a huge amount of exposure there, as you rightly say. A lot of them were in school together. That is there is I think there's a healthy no matter anywhere like there's a healthy rivalry in both places in terms of like you certainly don't want to lose it to your rivals. I'd say there would have been maybe a fear in terms of what did it mean for the game when you've got these two like effectively West or City teams in the final. But I mean, 2022 the gate for that was reasonably good. I think it was over 5,000 anyway. So I think you'll get that sense of rivalry around the game for sure. You'll get the colour around both places now uh, is class to see. It's for anybody involved in this time of year, it's an unbelievably special place to be. For anybody not, it's torture to look on and watch it. And the reality too, Paul, is, and I'm sure they're not saying this outwardly, but when you look at how open the Connacht Championship is, and then by extension the All Ireland Championship is after this, that's got to be a factor in the back of their mind. So, I mean, it would be a sore place to be to lose a county final and then watch your rivals go on to enjoy much more success afterwards. So all of that will definitely play a part.
It's funny in one way. I was looking at the teams in 22 that started. And for my Cullen, Andrew Power isn't there. Cian Dean isn't there. Micheál O'Reilly isn't there for them. And then if you look at the South Hill side of things, Rory Lavelle's not there. Owen McFadden, William Finnerty's not there. Evan Murphy's not there. Garrow Armstrong's not there. Brian Conlon obviously retired for them. So there is still quite a bit of a turnover in both of these teams from
Oh,
that 22 final.
oh, Gallagher as well, I'd say. Did you say
Yeah,
him?
on Gallagher, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, huge turnover. Now that's to be expected in terms of what you would have known definitely in both. There was a sense around both clubs that they've got good stocks coming, and you've seen them come through and make this team their own. I actually interviewed Spencer Thompson after the semi-final, and he was telling me about that final. Came on for 10 minutes at the end, had one shot, kicked it wide. And so when you look at the player he is now, I mean, can you imagine that?
That was his
Uh,
first
uh,
year senior, I'd say, was it?
yeah, so I think he was playing, actually started off playing junior. John O got him in, and sure, then in 2023, he was in with the Galway under 20s. And a year later, he's captain, and now he's and
Mm.
nominated for Young Footballer of the Year and on the cusp of a fairly remarkable season. So you've seen that progression. That was coming. Like these, there was in both clubs, they had good players coming through. There still are coming through. Don't get me wrong. I would say there's more of a sense. I mean, no, neither club is thinking this way, but if you were to paint the soil on it, there's probably more of a now or never sense around Mike Cullen in terms of, I would say there's a fairly hefty transition. I think a few of them are going away at the end of the year. It'd be interesting to see what happens from a coaching perspective. Kieran Murphy's obviously gone in with Clare as their head coach. So I'd say there might be a significant degree of change coming in that sense, whereas I don't get the same sense necessarily from Salthill. But I mean, neither of the clubs are going to think that way. This is you take the final on its merits, and both of them are looking at a game that they absolutely fully believe. I have no doubt that they're more than capable of winning.
Isn't it funny the way it's worked? Like all going up through underage, when you look at John Mayer and Rob Finnerty's team, they would have had the upper hand at Salthill at minor and 21s level. Bar the Mike Cullen minor team a couple of years ago that won that title. Like Mike Cullen haven't really had, I suppose, the underage success at A level that Salthill Knocknacarra have had. But then when it comes to senior level, Mike Cullen have had more success than Salthill Knocknacarra.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing is, a lot of those my current lads would have known. And I mean, I think like Peter Cook would have been in school with John Maher and Aidan Claffey and they're like, so they would have known what, and Robert Finlay actually, I would say. But so my point is, they knew the level that they were competing with. You know, like there's nothing unknown about this. That's what comes with familiarity breeds that sort of standard level. You know exactly what they're capable of. So I can see how that happened. The other thing too, Paul, is like. I know there's a bit of talk maybe nationally about Satlhill and their population and how they haven't won a county title since 2012. Like I mean, they're fucking hard won. Like they
Yeah,
really are
yeah.
hard won, and it's not like they've been doing no more than you go back to 2022 and just how close it was that year. During the semi-final last year, it's not like they fell off the face of the earth in that time either. Like getting over the line is not it's not a simple thing, and there's no guarantee that whatever happens this weekend that it'll count for anything moving forward for that. So it's a phenomenal opportunity, and that can be right now. That's it. You treat that as an opportunity in the moment. Maybe that becomes a bit of a threat in terms of the pressure that brings. Yeah, the success thing. So that's how thing have been consistently competitive for a long time, kind of building towards a stage like this. I don't think it's not like they came from nowhere, obviously.
Yeah, when you mentioned obviously paired to win there, so Till Knocknacarra win one in 12. We obviously see Curfin's domination then from 13 to 19. Mike Cullen win one in 20. Montbellew finally get over the line in 21. As we mentioned, the repeat of the 2022 final, Mike Cullen get one, and then Curfin get one then. So, like, if you look at it since 2012, only four clubs in Galway have won the Senior Football Championship.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's it's a like again, you go back to it. I'm sure there's people who'd be crying out to see a bit of variety in terms of winners and what comes with that. But ultimately, like that's the bar. Like, and they're just oh man, I go back to it. Like, they're really really hard one. Like they're getting a title is not easy, and it takes an unbelievable amount of work and things to go right for that to click. So look, there's a huge part of that for both of these clubs. Like this is the time is now. There's no tomorrow. And as much as I say that I think that might be a pressing thing for Mike Cullen, Sotell will treat it like that as well because they know themselves that you can do so much right and you might not get back to this stage again.
If you are Salthill Knocknacarra and you're Finian Hanley and his management team, how do you make any sense of that curving game?
It's, pre-Maher and post-Maher, I think, is a large part of it. I don't know how you made sense of it. It was I can imagine the review back on it afterwards, but I mean for that how slick they looked early on, and then how much I know I heard you speak about it already, but I thought a colossal swing in that game was the breach. I think it's the implied odds. It's not just the fact that you're taking a point off the board and going up the other end. It's the fact that Tottenham had lost was a 4 to 5 kickouts in a row at that stage, and they're really under the gun. And there's a bit of a reprieve there where suddenly the ball's not on your tee and you're not kicking that ball out to that press again. But it's ultimately like if you want to boil it down in my head anyway, ultimately that's what will decide this final is exactly that is kickouts. And if Moy Cullen are able to load the arc the way that Carfin were and force Donny Sullivan to kick that ball out long and fight around the middle with their monstrous middle eight, I think they'll probably win the game. So I think it'll come. Sachi will have to find a way. Up and down the country, Paul, teams are trying to find a way now where when you bleed, don't bleed heavy, especially on your own kick out. What can you do to make sure that that ball is not coming back at you again and again and again? And you're seeing it across the board here. And I'd say Salthill spent a huge amount of work on looking back on that. And was there a better? They actually had. I'm going off memory here. I'd say they had one short kick out during that spell, but it was Evan Wynn in the corner and he just blasted it straight
Yeah.
away up to the middle. So will they look at maybe a couple of other ways to get the ball out away short and get up the pitch? But yeah, that's, I mean, if there's one thing they need to improve coming into a final, they look at that, like their performance on their own kick out. How can they make sure that they're not caught in a absolute hurricane like they were again?
How much of a loss is John Mayer going to be? Because like the talk is fractured ankle. It's hard to see him play this weekend. How much of a loss is he going to be to Salthill Knocknacarra?
It's colossal. I mean, it's it's hard to put into words. I don't need to tell you this, but I mean, you see it. I would say nationally, probably John Maher didn't get the appreciation that he probably deserved until 2024. And then, in fairness, he did get the due recognition. But as important as he was for Galway, you can amplify that for Salthill. And it's not just the presence around the middle, it's that unbelievable punch run. You could argue the goal in the semi-final all stems from him reaching forward, pulling a load of men in form, and then those very quick hands that he has. So yeah, I mean, and there's no, that's just the reality. There's no way of dressing this up or saying there's anything better. He is an absolutely huge loss, and what that means for Sothill and for Mike Cullen is very significant because as I said to you, I do think this game it'll hinge on what happens in midfield, and Maher was so important for Sothill chances there.
Yeah, I think it will be devastated for him too when you see everything he's given with Galway over the last few years to not be able to line out in a county final for his club too is it's devastating for him.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And a guy who like him, he's a huge leader in that dress. I actually met him on the pitch afterwards when he was on crutches, walking around, kind of soaking in the atmosphere of it. But I look at, I mean, this is an obvious thing to say, but county final is obviously going to be diminished without Maher's presence. There's no doubt about that.
If you're looking at Mike Cullen, then lost the last two county finals to Kerfin, and they might say that it's just focused on the group and all this week leading up to the county final. But the element of pressure, potentially, if they don't get over the line, it's the third county final loss in a row. Do you think that pressure is going to be difficult to deal with this week?
I'm not sure. I mean, the different ways. That pressure would have been a lot more pressing if they were playing Carfin in the final. I mean, the third time and with that hanging over them. But the fact that it's Salthill who they've beaten, they've obviously taken some steps to address psychologically, that thing that they've been working on this year. So no, and I'm not sure. I wouldn't buy into that a huge amount really. I don't think there's. I don't think they'll be inhibited by that at all, really. But I think McCullough are in a very good place currently. I'm kind of surprised to see the nature of the conversation nationally. Again, I'm talking about here that's because it's what I come across with my work. But amidst all these conversations about kind of Connacht or All Ireland winners, Sothill feature prominently, and McCullough don't at all in some places, which I find kind of a weird one to square. Like this is a
It's
right tight
forgotten
game.
about that. I think they've got to an All-Ireland semi-final against Glen a few years ago.
And we'll look back on some wise they had in the second half that day and say, geez,
Yeah.
we could have, I mean, we're right, could have been right there or thereabouts with that team. So, yeah, I don't see that as being to be honest, like psychologically, it's the longing. This is a group that have won two county titles. Like this, that psychological thing is more of a factor when you haven't won it in a while or you're going for your first. So, I don't think, I don't think that'll be a disadvantage for my Cullen this weekend. No.
If we look at the a final, then I suppose from a Salthill, Knocknacarra, and Mike Cullen perspective, the big thing I think about Mike Cullen this weekend is they're just experts at finishing games.
No more, yeah, and we've seen that time and time again this year. Um, I mean, the strength and depth now is considerable, and you would have even like a lot of lads who probably aren't as maybe people aren't thinking about it as much currently because they haven't seen a lot of them. But just looking at the semi final, you see Conor Corkin out warming up beforehand, or James McLaughlin back fit and doing the warm up. Like they're guys we haven't seen who could absolutely make their mark. In terms of what they've cultivated this year, Sean O'Connor has come in and has made a great impact. Neil McCarthy coming off the bench as just a guaranteed punch. Peter Cook obviously is in a different bracket entirely, but if he starts, that means somebody else is going to have to lose out there. So yeah, look, they've got a really really solid depth there, a very good ability to kick on. The way that they won the semi final was very impressive. How they've gotten to this stage actually this year, even at times where they kind of had to at times not actually playing that well, I would have thought early on in the year, but just finding a way to cling on. Um, and you could say that's teams not putting them to the sword either, but ultimately they got themselves to a place where they just need to hit that mark again and again, and it's gotten them to a county final. So I think they're in a good place.
When you're talking there about Corcoran and McLaughlin, obviously they could be close this weekend. You'd imagine if they're warming up in the semi final. Cook, you just have to start him after I suppose the impact he brought. But what do you think happens with Liam Mulcahy? Because we've just seen him off the bench throughout this year's championship.
If I was to guess, and it's obviously just a complete guess, I'd say Cook will start and Mulcahy will come on. Is that's the way I see him dicing it.
Do you see
Um,
them overloading the middle, keeping Clark in it then, and maybe someone else drops out?
make the case for who. That's the if you're lining that like last year did Cook came back for the Uhtred quarterfinal, yeah,
Yeah.
and was kind of slotting in as that extra wing forward option. But now you've got not one but two McDonoughs in absolutely outrageous form. You got Desi in the corner. Niall Walsh is definitely not going to play. Johnny Maloney is in fine form. Jared Everton is a huge kick out target. So what are you doing then? Like that was as a front six, it's hard one to crack. And I thought Paul Kelly came into the game reasonably well in the semi final, kicked a good point. So I think if when it boils down to it, it's a similar change to the one that they made in the semi final. And then from a guy perspective, to have a punch like that coming is it's a guaranteed impact. So I can see fully why he might not start either.
Yeah, and Mulcahy's a player who was part of Pork Joyce's squad only a few years ago, so it's hard to believe he's only coming in. From Salthill Knocknacarra perspective, we mentioned Merv. It potentially looks like he's going to be out for this one. Interestingly, they brought on Niall Hanaho after 17 minutes. They also brought on Tomo at half time. They brought Jack Power on for Niall Hanaho, who Niall Hanaho only came on.
Yeah,
So what do you think Sawtill do here? Does someone drop back and Tomo slots in, or
I think it's tricky. It's tricky for both perspectives. It's tricky in terms of the matchups of what it means for my Cullen's full back line if Tomo, as you would expect, Tomo, Charlie, Power, and Rob Finnerty all start inside there. What does that mean for Rob Walser then? So if one of them was to drop out, what are you going to do in? I think physical presence in midfield is going to be very important in this game. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here, but they really are going to need uh like Michael Kitt or Paddy Kitt to be real unbelievable on kickouts or get a lot of them away short. Find a way to
Hmm.
break if Michael and load five around the arc. Still find a way to get those away, which is not a simple thing. So I can see. I think Tomo will start because of what it means for. It's a tricky one then for Michael's full back line in terms of what they do with their matchups in that case. So if they do that, I think you're forcing McCullen to adapt in some sense, whether that be to throw in a guy like Conor Corkin who has not played much football, or bring Sean Kelly, or start a Neil Mackay, whatever it is, you're forcing them to adapt something in that scenario.
yeah, if it comes into the middle, could Daniel O'Flaherty maybe be an option out around the middle, or do you think he stays where he is?
I think I was thinking about this actually last night. So I don't think they'll. Sean Kelly is probably going under the radar in terms of what he's doing for McCullen this year. Like he's only scored a point, but he's got. I think I was looking at it earlier. He's 15 points in assists in this year's championship. Like he's
Jesus.
tied is the highest for McCullen this year. Uh, he so Sean Kelly is very good. Surprise, surprise. Uh, But so I was thinking about that. Do they do something differently in terms of tagging him? And I don't think they want to move Matthew Thompson out of 11. So I don't think they necessarily will. In which case, I don't see them doing a huge amount of adaptation to like you know you throw these around in your head. Like, so let's say you're thinking about this during the week. So did he put Carl Sweeney up into that forward line to track Sean Kelly and bring Daniel Flaherty back, and maybe if it comes to it, he could do a man marking job on Cook, but he's also well able to match up with any of that half back line really. And you've got some big dangers there in the McCullough half forward line. So I mean, I'm talking outside of Cook here, but ultimately I think Salthill, the one that they'll put a circle around is what they do in midfield, and the rest of it I can't see them adjusting massively. So I think by and large, if I was to guess, Wynn is their go-to man. He's going to take Desi Keneally. That means that you're probably going to have Dealey on Fiacre, and Keneally will probably have to take Fionn. And then they'll more or less stick to what they've been doing all year in terms of the two manions in their half back line. Let Coswini do what he does, and Daniel Farty closer to the opposition's goal. So I don't, to answer your question, no, I don't, I wouldn't, I would be surprised if they go and take Daniel out of it like that.
Do you think Knocknacarra's plan then will be to run Niall Walsh? If it's called Sweeney or someone, because obviously Niall Walsh has just given Mike Cullen an unbelievable balance to their forward line this year since he's moved out to 11. And I think we're beginning to see the loss Niall Walsh was when he wasn't fit in one or two of those county finals for Mike Cullen.
Yeah, I mean, it go again. I couldn't agree with you more. Like now, Walsh has 117 scored this year. He's 4-3 in assists. His kick pass, especially if they win, that's why big fear for Sawtell is like they start winning opposition kickouts, get the ball to him in 11, and his kick inside to Desi or one of the McDonoughs is so dangerous. So you've got to be like man mark him right there. Now the same thing is true, obviously, right? I mean, there's a give and get. This is the nature of one doesn't happen without the other. So there's what you do defensively, but it's also what you do attacking wise. And I can absolutely see how Sawtell might look at some of their greyhounds and think if we can get any of Colin Sweeney one on one with a Niall Walsh or a Jared Averin, go at him, and the onus is on them then to be able to hold their own in that sense. So that's this is the nature of the game now. Is you're talking about either trying to create numerical overloads, like you're trying. It's about numbers or it's about angles, and if you can get those players one on one in certain angles, then yeah, you'd back them to do that. So McCullen are pretty good at doing that too on the other side now in terms of how they might create a one on one, especially for Dave Wynn coming up that left hand side or someone like that. So both of those teams are going to be conscious of that. I'm sure they've their homework done, and ultimately it's you can talk all you like about the what's the American football line, all about the X's and O's, but this is about Jimmys and Joes. Like it's about the star players, no snares. Are they able to stand up to that particular test?
When you're looking at Mike Cullen across the middle, there's obviously a huge amount of threats, but it really starts from Paul Kelly, Jared Daverin, Peter Cook, Tom Clark. If three or four there, if you saw till, are you tempted then maybe to bring Jack Power, Niall Hanaho in alongside Michael Kitt to try and match Mike Cullen around here? Or do you if you're Salthill on Garrett, do you focus on trying to, I suppose, that running from deep with the Manions and Sweeney is obviously, and Daniel O'Flaherty coming back has obviously got them to a point. Do they try and go and match Mike Cullen?
I did. That's a really good question, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot currently in terms of the way Gaelic football is now. And there's this fascination and huge amount of talk about defensive setups, and I think this is the legacy of the All Ireland final, really, in terms of a lot of people are writing the obituary for Jimmy Guinness's zone defense system and saying that you can't defend like this anymore. And I suppose I mean, I wouldn't lose sight of the bigger picture thing, which is that like that stuff is important. It's secondary important, but the primary thing in the game now, the primary thing is possession. It's can you get enough phases in a game, and if Sawtell can worry all they like about matching up in terms of what they do when in defense and attack, but if you can't, if Mike Cullen end up dominant on their own kick out and are able to break Sawtell's kick out the way that Carfin broke it in the second half, they're going to be in huge trouble. So you've just got to find a way, regardless, to get hands on ball. That's your starting point, right? That's your primary job is what are you going to do in that sense. And if it means, I mean, you can mirror Mike Cullen have a very effective kick out where they load one side, like a pod on one side and put Davern on the other side. If they do exactly that and let, who run it the way that Greeley runs it, it's nearly like it's it's almost like a script in terms of this is exactly what we're going to do to start a game, and they can be very similar in that sense. But they're Salthill's in my head anyway, the way that this game is going to live and die is Satlhill's chances here is what happens on their own kickout. They have to absolutely find a way to get those away. And Donny O'Sullivan, especially when he was with Limerick, would have had a reputation. And sure, you know this better than I do. But his reputation would have been he was an excellent. I know it was a different game, but a clipping them short, just getting them away very, very fast. So maybe that's your answer, and they need a day where it's not windy and they're able to do that. And you can, and maybe in that context, you've got players who you bring back guys who can punch holes. So your argument for a Daniel O'Flaherty closer to his goal, maybe that's the answer. You get the ball to him in his own half and just watch him absolutely tear holes all the way and get them out of their own half. But for me, yeah, that's if it is the thing that's Salthill, their job number one is how do we win our own kick out. And there's a lot smarter men than I am in that coaching there, and I'm sure they put a lot of thought into it. But finding an answer to that is going to be vital.
What do Mike Cullen do with Matthew Thompson, Rob Finnerty, Charlie Power, Tom O'Cullen?
That's a formidable task. Anyway, the way I think that Owen Kelly has marked Robert Finney in the past, so you would expect that they might do a similar thing again. I wouldn't be. Whereas at the other side, I'd be very surprised if Sartell pull ahead. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Cullen do. If it is, I don't know, a Neil McCahey or Corcoran coming in, or maybe it's Sean Kelly coming back in worst case scenario. But if you know, I'll take a stab at it. I'd say Owen Kelly will take Robert Finnerty. I think that leaves Mikey Maughan on Charlie Power. And the only question then is if Tomo starts. And if he does start, I think they'll swap that where Aidan Claffey takes Charlie Power and Mikey Maughan goes across to Tom O'Cullen. So in that scenario, Matthew Thompson. I mean, I don't know. Will this sounds mad now, but just the way the game is, I'm not sure will Sawtill necessarily man mark a Peter Cook, right? When you're out around the middle and he's doing what he's doing, it's a hard thing to do. But it's by a similar token, I'm not necessarily sure how easy is it to, or will Mike Cullen man mark Matthew Thompson. I think that you're back you know, a duel in terms of Sean Kelly trying to do what he does and Matt Thompson trying to do what he does, and the two of them are kind of standing toe to toe in that sense. But I don't think they're going to follow him to the ends of earths, and that Sean Kelly will sacrifice his game entirely to do that job because, as you're seeing, he's been very effective getting up the pitch as well.
When it comes to the half back line, then if Salthill maybe do keep things the same, I think Paddy Kitt and Sean O'Connor probably just go on each other. They'll look like they'll tag up. Is it David Wynn maybe goes in O'Flaherty, and you could see Thompson and Kelly going head to head then?
Yeah, Sean O'Connor has been. I think he's had a really good year. He
Yeah.
really has. He's getting forward. He's creating. I mean, he created at least 3 points in the semi final. He got up and kicked the point in the second half. He's been, I'd say, he's 4 or 5 points scored this year. So he's really come in and added something in that sense for them. I think Paddy Kitt's going to be hugely important for Salthill in a kick-out sense. I think you see that a lot, and particularly how they match up. And that the other one then is what happens. And I know I'm getting ahead of your question here, but a big part of this is whether it's a if it's a Daniel O'Flaherty or if it's a one of the Manions. Like Johnny Maloney is, I mean, he's just such a luxury for Mike Cullen. He's got an unbelievable. His scoring ability is obviously unbelievable. He's a fiend one on one. If you run into him, you'll do very well to come out with the ball. And that's a matchup that I think will not concern, but is one that definitely Satlhill will have to put a lot of thought into. So yeah, but I mean, ultimately, yeah, that's I think it will be something along those lines that Sean O'Connor ends up with Paddy Kitt there. Matthew Thompson goes out and plays his own game, and Sean Kelly does his version of that too, which obviously does involve some actual man marking as well. And then you'll see in this Mike Cullen scenario that I have, you'll see Cook and Paul Kelly in midfield, and you'll see Maloney, Walsh, Ger across their half forward line, and the two McDonoughs and Desi inside.
These matchups are unbelievable, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I, this is heavyweight stuff now. Like this is, and I mean, so I'm to a certain extent I'm biased here, Paul, and I appreciate that. But I honestly do think like I'm covering a huge amount of club championships at the minute. And I'm watching a lot of games, and Galway football is definitely at a very high place when it comes to the way that they've understood the new rules. Like you've got to be honest with your press, or teams are going to get their kickouts away. You're seeing that a lot. They understand how to do that. On the other side, you're seeing a lot of creativity in terms of how teams are getting away their kickouts short. Some of the attack and play we've seen this year has been really, really effective. So this is fitting in that sense. I do think it's two heavyweights going toe to toe. I do think it'll be a right good game in that scenario, and it's the occasion too, and I wouldn't overlook that. Definitely, I do. I mean, I do think it's like county finals are this is my favorite time of the year, especially in a work sense. Like, and they're unreal. Like, it's a day guaranteed where you're going to see absolute joy and heartbreak. Somebody is guaranteed to feel two polar opposite ends of the emotional spectrum, and what it does for it's there's a lot of talk recently, especially in this county, about the split season and maybe the promotional damage of that. But I often think about it in a more kind of agricultural sense than that, in that you can talk about the promotion damage of the split season, but if you think about it, think about the scenes that we've seen in county finals over the last couple of weeks. And that's a couple of thousand people who've had this like phenomenal day, or in some cases a heartbreaking day. But that is happening across the board in the county every single weekend. You've got a weekend now, we're looking ahead to 20 different county finals. So if you added up the amass total of all those people and all the emotion they're going to feel, sure, it's colossal. And it's okay to say that. It's okay to say this is a remarkable thing that we have here. And Saturday night is going to be a huge part of that. No more than I thought the semi-finals was just it was a cool occasion. It was
Yeah.
the buzz that was around the place, the fact that the weather actually cooperated, the all that definitely fit into it. That we got two great games, and I'm sure Saturday will feel similar again.
Yeah, and I think it's great to have the lights for an occasion like this. Like we're always looking down at Mayo and Castlebar and wanting to have that. So now to have it, I think is class. You look at 22, it was 110 to 1-9. Mike Cullen came out victorious. I don't think there's any point in saying otherwise. This is going to go right down to the wire again.
Yeah, I absolutely would expect very similar. And two teams that you could get dramatic lurches in this game, as we've seen this year now. Right back to you saw that during the group stages, I thought. So yeah, I think there's definitely scope for this to be right there or thereabouts until the final whistle. I think if Salthill are worrying about how do they get away their kickouts, McCullough are worrying about how do you slow down this. When Salthill are able to go on first phase and go fast, they really do get after teams, and you see that time and again. And when their chances there to go for the throat, they now have the capability to do that. You saw that in the first half, whether it be Ralph Finley's goal or the couple of 2 pointers they kicked after that, that they really were pouring it on there. So I think this you will we're becoming more accustomed to games lurching dramatically. It's not as big a deal to be 6 or 7 points down, and with especially with 2 pointers, you'll come back around again. But when it comes down to it, I think this will be stride for stride right until the end.
Mars, who's going to win the Frank Fox on Saturday evening?
I I think Mike Cullen. Uh, so I think Salthill are an exceptionally talented side, and they really impressed me to get to this stage. But I think John Maher's loss is hugely significant, and in that context, I think McCullen are in a very good place to rattle them. The only thing is if Salthill are able to get after them fast and maybe try and get at that full back line one on one, in which case it depends on what actually McCullen do. Do they pull a rabbit out of the hat there? But yeah, for the reasons that McCullen have been building steadily towards this stage, their strength and depth, the fact that Salthill have a hugely significant player missing, I'm going to say McCullen.
Yeah,
So put the house in Salthill.
I'm with you there. I just think Mayor's loss will be too much for Salthill to cope with, and I think the fact Mike Cullen have been beaten last year at two county final stages, I just think and I think it sort of is now or never for Mike Cullen this weekend as well. So I just think Mike Cullen will slightly edge this one, but could be wrong there.
Um,
Sligo champions obviously in the quarter final for either of these sides, and then Leitrim champions. They're not playing till the eighth or ninth for the quarter final, anyways. A 2 week break, 2 week turnaround, but there's definitely an opportunity here for both of these sides, whichever to push on in Connacht.
There is. No, I think every team could legitimately, I say this sincerely now, every one of those teams could, like, if Gulara Shandil do get over. I think people are forgetting, like, Gulara Shandil took a replay last year as well to get out of Sligo. Like, this is, and then they were full value for their kind of title as well. So, they could look at it from that sense for sure. Leitrim Gales, like, your first win, I'm sure they celebrated it hard, but you see the quality that's in their team, in their coaching ticket too. I'm led to believe Kevin Johnson is up there doing a bit of coaching actually.
Okay.
Um, uh, And so yeah, two like you're right. There's an opportunity there. All these teams are looking at that. That's what happens when the levels are as even as they are, is that you start to kind of look at it and think, there's a what if for all of these teams. So if whoever comes out of Galway will have a right good chance in terms of coming out of that. But I'm sure Westport or Ballina or Patrick Pierce's or St. Bridget's are all thinking the same way as well, that if we can just get over this one, who knows what could come next.
Not to get ahead of ourselves or anything, but the way the All Ireland odds are at the minute, Salthill Knocknacarra 14 to 1, by Cuilinn 33 to 1.
Yeah, I just don't. That somebody has to explain that to me from a maths perspective. I don't. This doesn't make sense to me. Like I don't understand how McCullen are that. For I understand that Salthill are full value to be in that conversation for sure. If they get over this, they're more than capable of kicking on, and who knows what could come next. But I think the same thing is true for Mike Cullen. And I suppose it's it's also the virtue of the fact that how this year has gone, isn't it, Paul? Like you've got every semi-finalist, Barkler, Shantill are gone. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're all gone.
Yeah,
In certain cases, they didn't actually weren't able to get out of their county. A lot of the teams, I would say, of the teams left who maybe in the recesses of their thought would have had some sort of idea that if we can get out of a county, there's an All Ireland here, the likes of a Ballyboden or Kilcoo or a Scottstown, might be in the back of their minds. But it's far from a guarantee, and they wouldn't make them short favourites whatsoever. So that yeah, I think it's absolutely class that we have as even what looks at the minute anyways to be as even a club championship as we do. The next couple of weeks are going to have some blockbuster games, a whole host of teams there who will genuinely go into every single game genuinely believing that they're capable of winning All Ireland. And sure, isn't that great? That's what we want football to be. Like that lack of predictability and the fact that you've got as many potential winners as you do is just a super place to be.
yes, the Premier Junior Football final between Williamstown and Castle. That's at 5:30. It's the curtain raiser. We'll hopefully have some build up to that throughout this week. The intermediate final then, Sunday at 2, we'll be hearing from both camps from Calder and Spittle. That's at 2 o'clock at Chew Stadium. And Anna Down and Clare Galway then they play in the primary Junior 2 football final at 12 o'clock on Sunday. Just briefly on the intermediate final, Maurice. Obviously, Calder beating in last year's final back there on Spithill. I suppose came down from senior a couple of years ago and have struggled to get back there in previous years, but this year they've got things together and they're obviously in a final. How do you see this intermediate final unfolding at the weekend?
It's a really exciting game to me. Two teams that a great sign of a team is that you're able to take a punch, like take a knock to the jaw and come back from it. And to their credit, the reason both these two teams are in the final is because they did exactly that in the semi-final. So if it's like Corfin scoring two quick fire goals, absolutely carving a full back line open and fighting back from that, or if it's, I mean, I think we're Spittle 7-1, or there was definitely 6-0 down anyway at this before they kicked the two-pointer, and then they kind of petered away from the game after that again. Two really strong spines to these teams, like right down their core. You've got some exciting matchups there. You'd be very disappointed for Sean Kane, like in terms of especially thinking back to last year and uh, if you're led to believe reports, he's done a bit of damage to the knee there, right? So that is a fairly significant loss. But as I say, I think there's what you've seen from both of these two teams. The scope there for them to absolutely cut loose at times. Like Spittle have 5 goals in their last 2 games. They really can when they catch fire. They can absolutely catch fire. Culture showed that they're not the way that they fought back. I thought was very admirable in that semi final and just refused to go away. And I think a great sign of a team is the Dublin used to score that goal all the time where like they're breaking down the middle, they palm a ball back to the back post and somebody come in inside it. And the fact that Knockton didn't take the shot himself, that he actually squared it across to Alan Knockton actually at the post to make sure that it was the 99% goal. All of that is very impressive. So it's a game that I'm really looking forward to.
In one sense, there's two interesting stories here. For Caltra, it would be some turnaround in the space of 12 months to go one step further. But if you look at Don Spithill, goalkeeper Manus Brannock, obviously 12 months ago, leads Oncar Rua up to intermediate football, but for him then to win an intermediate title with his own club in 12 months too at the weekend would be something extraordinary.
It would be unbelievable, yeah. And the one like the all of the what the emotional heartstrings that journalists like myself like to go looking for in a final, you have them here. So you've got the like the O'Lees for Spittle, and just absolutely solid. Liam Kelly back playing the way that he's playing, and geez, when he goes, he is one hard man to stop. The point he kicked in the second half on his right was absolutely class in the semi final. So yeah, there's a lot there, in a lot of makings there for it to be just a right good final. And as I say, like two teams again will have zero hesitation that they're more than capable of winning this and kicking on and establishing themselves, or at least retaining their senior status next year.
I was speaking to Spittal selector Donald DeBarra, and he was saying that they weren't hoping that they'd have to bring Liam O'Connell on in the semi-final, but the fact they brought him on, they're actually not sure of how much his involvement will be either this weekend.
And Paul, the it's across the board. It is a thing that is hinging on teams. It's availability. Like regardless of, you can talk all you like. Same thing is true for Sean Kane now, by the way, and I wouldn't underestimate his loss. But uh, regardless of, you can talk all you like about tactics and form or all that kind of stuff. But the most important thing still, I think we can overestimate that stuff, is still availability. Have your best players available to you. And fit, obviously, which is huge. And I think you see it. Like I look at someone like Anthony now, who just looks like he's hopping off the ground. Like he looks like he's in a prime condition. So, yeah, I mean, it's. I'm sure that's of all the things that you'd be fretting about in a week like this, that would be one of the main ones.
Who's winning the intermediate title for you?
I'm going to say Spittle. I think. Like so, what Caltra banked from last year, I think will definitely stand to them. But a couple of things for me. I think the fact that Spittle are as goal hungry, I'd say they scored a goal in every single game they played this year, and also that Corfin got in with the ease is not the right word, but the way that they did, I think would be a slight fear. So I could see it, maybe that for Spill might not be in the game for a spell, but then can stick something like that. I do think the losses for Culture are fairly formidable as well. So ultimately, like, what are we talking about here? But boil it down, I think you're talking about 2-1 score finals. Like, I'd be surprised if either of these games are one-sided. But I'm gonna go for the West Galway club, and I'll say Spittle.
I think it's Kilmina, is it? I'm fairly sure for the winner. I
I
think
actually
it's Kilmina.
I covered that Kilmina, my
Yeah.
David's intermediate game last week. A cracker. Oh man, really, really good game. Like, and a right good team. A team who've actually been experience of going on a run to Croke Park previously as well. Got inter-county quality there in terms of Jack Carney. That was the Mayo senior final was a very entertaining game, not the most amazing standard. The intermediate final was a right good game and a very good standard. So that I, I draw a circle around that community team. That would be a formidable task regardless.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at least for this year, but uh, like similar to what Michael said last year, there'll be no quick turnaround to compared to Cross Malina last year. But yeah, just before we finish, Mars, it's huge, really, this intermediate final in one sense. Then when you consider it that senior football at stake.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the of reality of you. I was actually just listening to the radio last night and hearing just talk about the Caltra '97 team, um like the what it means to be a. You see that across the board, Paul. Like the senior status matters a whole pile to a lot of clubs, especially given, I think, in their heart of hearts, a lot of clubs realize that the height of their ambition, as much as the virtue of a competition should be, will dream of winning a Frank Fox one day. A lot of clubs are realizing that just staying competitive and staying in senior is worth a lot. And it takes it's a especially the way that this thing is going. Like, it takes an unbelievable amount to actually get beyond that. So to get up there and to stay there is that's massive, like absolutely massive for a lot of clubs. But yeah, I mean, that it kind of, in a perverse way, I love that about games like this. Like, we're all totally aware of the stakes. Like, what's on the line, it'll be visible to you as you're watching the game. Every single play is weighted with that reality. So it does really add to the spectacle and the drama of it all.
Yeah, should be fascinating between Spittal and Culture this weekend. 2 o'clock at Tuam Stadium on Sunday for that one. But that's all we do have time for on today's show. Thanks to Marsh for coming on.
Thanks, Paul.